And in other news, Michigan Supreme Court Justice Richard Bernstein was in the Upper Peninsula this week. He stopped by WJMN Local 3 earlier today to talk about a variety of topics. One of his missions during his visit was to scope out what kind of resources are needed in UP courthouses. Something he noticed was a lack of security that UP courthouses have.
That was a common issue in the UP, that a lot of these courthouses didn't even have security. Imagine you're a judge, you're working in a courthouse, you're basically handling, especially if you're handling the family docket, that's where things can get very intense, things can get very emotional, there's a lot of things that are going on, and you don't even have a bailiff, you don't have an officer, you don't have security. That's something that, is of concern. So, just to give you an example, that went on for a little while. So I think, in essence, yeah, I think in the UP, when you're looking at courts, how they function, I would say that a number of our courts here, we have to work better to make sure that they have the minimum amount of resources to function the way that a court needs to function.
Justice Bernstein became the first blind justice elected to the Michigan Supreme Court in November of 2014. And with Michigan Supreme Court's recent ruling that sexual orientation is protected by Michigan law, Bernstein says he related to the case.
As a disabled person, as a blind person, I know that feeling of what it's like to be discriminated against. I know that feeling of what it's like to not be able to do things. As a person who, before becoming a justice, basically did pro bono work and represented people with disabilities and special needs, for 15 years, primarily veterans who were wheelchair users, you could see what it's like for people to not have the opportunity to feel included. You can see what it was like for people to not be a part of a community. You could see what it was like, that pain that people feel when they're excluded. And that notion that, this has been my life's work to make sure that you have inclusivity for people with disabilities, for veterans who are wheelchair users, to make sure that they're a part of our communities and are a part of our society. This is kind of tangential to that, because ultimately what you're doing is you're basically extending the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to allow for all people to be included and for nobody to feel left out or discriminated against. And this has been my life's work forever, to make sure that people are included and that no one gets left out and that no one feels a sense of isolation. That's the idea of kind of disability rights, and that's the idea of civil rights, and that's how I've merged the two.